Hold
Oh
on.
man. All right. Take three.
Hit you with that joint.
Oh man. What's going on, good people? This is the Weed Comes Equals podcast,
Yeah,
where everyday people have extraordinary conversations. I'm Q.
I'm Jay.
We back with you again. One more time. It's good to see you. Good to
Yes, sir.
filled with immense gratitude, filled with true humble spirit and heart. You know, we coming to the end of a monumental year. I don't even know how to describe this year, but
That was good.
yeah, maybe we have to at some point in the near future do a recap. We might not even be able to do that really until we get about 6 months away from where we are today. I don't know. It's like it feels just a little too close because maybe we kind of like
Like nervous, like nervous because this has been a year of okay, can't get any worse.
right,
Okay, well at least we made it through that.
right,
Dang.
right. And then at some point, you know, we find ourselves sort of right back in it. Oh man. But yeah, man. I mean, we've had like so many different things happen this year. But I think one of the precursors to this conversation is something that took place a couple of months ago that, you know, we kind of thought would be a really good opportunity for us to unpack some things that we've kind of been talking about over the course of a number of conversations that we've had over, you know, prior episodes and so forth. But I think we want to just dive in a little deep on this one today. A couple months ago, I went home to visit family. That was one of the reasons I went home. But the primary reason that I went home was that I had a really good friend from childhood, most of my childhood, and then also into adulthood, had passed away. And he had some health conditions, and it was really unexpected because he was under the age of 40. And I think that really kind of hit home because it's when somebody that close to you, somebody who's been a part of your life and a part of your story ever since you've been really, really young. I mean, at least I would say since I was 13, 12. I was really, really good friends with his older brother. And so by default, naturally, because they're close in age, all of us kind of, you know, became
Hung out.
hung out and stuff like that. So yeah, so we're talking like around 13, 12, 13, actually maybe even a little bit younger than that. And so that was a really powerful experience to have happen at this stage of my life. But I think, you know, in this shaping of visiting home, you know, there was like the literal aspect of visiting home, and then there was also like the metaphorical aspect of visiting home. And mind you, this is all in like the context and framing of the entire year, you know, all of 2020, I think is within the same context of going home.
Yeah, I was about to ask as you talk about going home. Literally, was that? And I'm sure it probably was, but was that special to you because of how 2020 has been and the fact that you got the opportunity to do something that some people maybe still haven't had a chance to do?
You know, I didn't think about that. I haven't considered the that the going home was a privilege in a different kind of way. And other people have not had a chance to be around their family and their loved ones and friends and so forth because of this year and the distance, like we talked about in our last conversation, where it's just not safe to be close.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, but that's a really good question. I want to say, yeah, I would say that the spirit of that was in the space,
Mm-hmm.
was like sort of hovering over the entirety of the trip,
Mm-hmm.
even though I didn't name it till just now, when when you said that.
Yeah, it looked good on you. I'm here lately. I've been big on like certain things we go through. It might look good on you. It might not look so good on you, but like the trip looked good on you. It when we talked while you were gone and texting just whatever, it felt like a deeper, like we talked about diving deep today into it. It felt like a deeper reset than just oh yeah, I went back home. I'm not like born from here, so I just went back home. It was a cool little reset. Nah, that joint felt spiritual, you
It
know.
was. It was, and it was probably for a
Hmm.
couple reasons. I would say, number one, the primary reason was that the length of the trip was extended much longer, almost twice as long as what the initial trip was supposed to be. So I left on the trip, and I was only planning to be gone for about a week or so, and
Okay.
that extended into about 2.5 weeks, for a whole host of reasons that I won't go into now. But
No, no, no.
um, the just the time was almost as if like the work was incomplete. Like
Mm,
I was home, but I wasn't home yet. I
mm,
was I was physically home, but I needed to process some things that allowed me
I
to be
got you.
physically
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
be like metaphysically home at the same time that I was physically home in the space.
Yeah.
Um, and when I had time to slow down, time to when I first got there and I hit the ground, and whenever going home, there's always this process of like, I'm trying to do these 15 things while I'm here. I want to go see this person. I want to go visit that
Yeah.
person. I want to do this. I want to stop by here. I want to, whatever the case may be. And uh, the extension of the trip allowed for all of that to take place.
Hmm.
And then an additional amount of time where it's like, okay, so now I'm here. Like I'm actually just here. I'm not visiting on a trip. I'm here. And I could just stand still and pause and kind of take a break. And
Hmm.
what it actually allowed me to do was the second thing, which was process all of the things that have always been home to me growing up, and what it means for those things to be like put in front of me, for me to interrogate, for me to
Yeah.
unpack and analyze. And so like seeing my mom, like being stepping foot in my old like childhood bedroom, and
Okay. Okay.
walking and moving through spaces, like walking in and out of my great grandmother's house,
Hmm.
just like Big Mama's house, and just all
Hmm.
of these sort of physical spaces and places. And even as I was there, like say I would drive and go to the store or go to Starbucks or something like that,
Uh-huh.
because of my friend's death, what it did was it actually, uh the way I can describe it is like, so okay, so you know how Google traces their maps with those vehicles, and they have the vehicles
Hmm.
driving around, and it has the little thing on it,
Yeah. Big cameras on the joint.
cameras in all
Yeah.
direction, right? And
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
mapping, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, basically updating the map constantly. And so
Uh-huh.
this trip was like an updating of the Google map, but my sort of
Oh.
spiritual version of it. So I was driving down the street,
Cool.
and I would look to the left, and then I would say, I come up to the top of the hill, and it's like, man, that cleaner's right there. That laundromat used to be the Denny's that we used to go to, and we would
Denny's.
sit in the Denny's and drink milkshakes and just go there after playing basketball or something like that. And so all of these sort of spiritual, metaphysical, metaphorical landmarks started to emerge, even though I had seen those things like hundreds, thousands, millions of times up until that point. But for some reason, the processing of that just, I don't know, it felt different. And the same thing happened stepping foot inside of my own home. Yeah. So,
Gotcha.
So I think I would say that's a challenge for me of figuring out what to do with all of this new information, like how to
now that you got the update to the spiritual Google map.
Update
Yeah.
On the map. Right. Exactly. So yeah, it was definitely a visit home, but it was a visit home.
Oh man. Can I just, this is a conversation, but I just gotta ask you some questions, bro. One question being, was it like a living in a moment, with watching the moment be lived type of thing, like when you went into certain settings, like kind of like movie view?
Yes.
There's one view of the actual actor in the movie that the frame will cut to sometimes, but then there's our audience view watching the person, where you like having those experiences over and over again. Like, okay, so, for one, you said going in your childhood bedroom, like seeing things, like did it feel like you were watching yourself see those things and pick them up? Like, I don't know, it might've been anything laying around. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It was, oh man, it was like hundreds of those things.
Okay.
It was, okay, let me just give you a couple of examples. So,
okay.
Number one, while I was there, my mom had me cut the grass like multiple times.
Okay.
You get put to work and stuff, like when you go
to it's men though.
Yeah, they find something for you to do.
It's men though. Yeah.
And there might be something to that too. I don't know what, like, whether there's some unpacking to the sort of reposturing you back into your childhood chores when you come home. That's a reconnecting thing with you and your, like, your guardians or your parents. There's something to that. But okay, I'll come back to that. I'm not going to come back to that, meaning I'm just going to keep going forward, but we'll put a pin in that and come back to that at some point. Okay, so like cutting the grass, for instance. There's a part, so we have a really, really like big backyard.
Okay.
And there's a part at the bottom of the backyard that used to always give me a lot of hell when I was cutting grass. It's just like this weird little odd part at the bottom. Over to the side of this part, there's the fence that touches my neighbor's fence that's on the street behind us.
Okay.
And there's always been this piece of plywood that has been there probably my entire life, but it's on the neighbor side of the fence. It's like stuck behind this big tree.
Okay.
And when I was cutting grass this time, I was like, I stopped and I just really stared at this piece of plywood. It's like an old board from, so our arena, the basketball arena, used to be called the Capitol Center.
Okay.
It was like the Omni before Phillips Arena here.
Yeah.
It was the Capitol Center before they opened up, the new basketball arena downtown.
Yeah.
And so it's a board from the Capitol Center, has the Capitol Center on the outside of the board. And I've been seeing this thing my whole life, and I was like, I've never really looked at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could see something, but you never look at it. Little things like that, And so another really good example of this, and I think this kind of, leads us right into our conversation today about having conversations with our younger selves or self, is, so my mom had me moving some stuff in the basement around, just moving boxes. Sometimes I think it's busy work. It's like, this is a way that I know that I can have you in the house, if I have you
Mm,
doing busy work sometimes.
okay.
So, but it's also necessary work, but still busy work. But
Yeah.
so I'm moving these boxes in the basement, and I come across my comic book collection.
Okay.
And I started for like the whole rest of that night. This was during the middle of the week. For the
Okay.
whole rest of that night, I hadn't opened this container that had my comic books from when I was, preteen, teen,
Yeah.
yeah, around that age, preteen,
Yeah.
teen, 11, 12, and up. And I started opening this package, and and I was like, wow, I hadn't looked at this stuff in a long time. And
Hmm.
there was an immediate feeling that came over me of like pure joy.
Okay.
And when the feeling came over me of pure joy, it made me realize that I haven't felt that feeling in a long time. It wasn't until I had the feeling again I
Mm.
realized it had been absent from my life for years.
It's something to that.
And the joy was, I was like transported. That's the word I was looking for. I was transported back to that time of going to the comic book store, spending my last little bit of money on these comics,
Hmm.
immersing myself in its world. I was a Marvel person. I wasn't a DC person. I was a big Marvel person. Immersing myself in this world, and then uh, bringing the world out of the book and into my physical existence when I would be in the basement creating my own storylines and my own comics. And I would
Mm.
have my towel, and I would tuck my towel in my shirt, and it would be my cape. Some folks might be too young to even know about that because they don't even play games like that no more. You know what I mean?
Man.
And just creating all of these characters.
Yeah.
And I just say all that to say like there was something about like, wow, um, where did that joy go?
Mm.
Uh, where did that exuberance go? Where did that
Hmm.
freedom, that sort of like liberative, like I can be anywhere in the world when I am um, diving deep into these stories.
Hmm.
And so much so that in the process of me talking about it, immediately I had the question of, I know I'm just unloading stuff that we got a lot to unpack here.
Nah, this is great. Yeah.
Immediately, I had the question of, why is it when we are seeking to go to a place of comfort and peace and joy and solitude and excitement and freedom, we often
Hmm.
close our eyes? Like, why do we
Mm.
close our eyes to the things that we see right in front of us in order to transport us? What is it about the closing of the eyes to block off the things that are in our immediate present to take us somewhere away? Maybe that's in the future, maybe that's in the past, maybe that's somewhere, I don't know. But I just did it as we were talking in this conversation. I closed my eyes in the middle of talking, and it took me
Yeah.
almost like a lily pad. Like, it took me back to October of having that experience of joy. And
Uh-huh.
then I went from that lily pad and leapfrog back to the childhood, all in
Okay.
the same continuum of
Okay.
feeling. So actually, let me stop there. Let me just, because I know I said a lot. Um,
Nah, it's nah. I just got more questions that I think just gonna fill in the conversation or whatever. Couple things that maybe we'll come back to, maybe we won't come back to, but
and
as it relates to a
oh, but before you do
oh no,
that,
go
I was
ahead.
going to
Go
say
ahead.
I do want to hear whether you've had a version of that same type of thing happen
Okay,
with
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. All
with the
right.
comic book.
Yeah, I got one. I got one that happened recently. I think I can tie it in. But I wanted to say, I wrote it down. What is it about having to literally experience the old feeling that makes it real right now? So as it relates to talking to the younger selves, I think that can be a challenge for us sometimes because we have no recollection, we have no reference point, no framework for the spaces that our older selves used to inhabit on the regular. So you had to close your eyes, and I think it's something to that as well. But you close your eyes and you go to this old feeling. What is it about having to experience it now in order to make it real? Does that make any sense?
Okay, let me make sure I understand your question. Is your question grounded in a position that says that there's something fleeting about the feeling that we have to find a way to go and reclaim it?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, because I'm still I'm still working
Yeah.
it out as I ask the question. But yeah, I think I'm getting at the fact that it can be a challenge, as I said, talking to your younger self because you just don't have a starting point because the feelings are so fleeting and they're so far behind us. We feel so far removed from them that we have to do intentional, like contemplative practices like closing our eyes and meditating and stuff like that to even get in the space to say, oh yeah, it did feel good when I did this. It did bring me life, bring me joy when I did this, versus being able to kind of go through our memories Rolodex and say, at 12,
Yeah.
at the age of 12, I used to feel like this every day. So how do I get back to that space? Because you hear all the gurus and influencers talk about advice to your younger self, but what the hell? How the hell do I even get my younger self to sit down in front of me to have the conversation? A lot of times I don't know where that guy is. I don't even know where he is. Like he's there. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know where he is. Or my 12-year-old self versus my 11-year-old self when my grandfather passed, versus my 9-year-old self when he first got sick, versus my 6-year-old self when he beat a heart attack. Like, do you know how much digging I gotta go? You talk about digging through those comic books. You know how many like comic books in my mind I gotta go through to get back to that guy to be able to have much less advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's heavy. That's heavy. And it's and immediately as I was listening to your question, I said to myself, um, why does Jay have to ask that question?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
why why are we so far away? Why isn't why aren't those versions of ourselves that you described at those different ages
Mm-hmm.
always with us every day?
Yeah.
What
There we
happens in
go.
the world? What happens in the process of
There we go.
that gets us so distant
Mm-hmm.
from that level of freedom and joy and
Mm-hmm.
excitement? And I mean, I could bury myself in that experience for hours. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the basement, thumbing through the comic books for hours. Like,
Yeah.
and not have a desire to be done.
Hmm.
So okay, so and the reason I said it like that is tying this idea of the distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and I may make an argument that because somebody or somebodies told us that it's not safe to be close, but we'll come back to that though. So um, as there's something about the process of us aging
Mm-hmm.
that it becomes more about completion than being present.
Yeah,
It's
that
that the
that's a big
joy that
part
I
of it.
described in those books was never about finishing the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about like comic books and Marvel and DC and all of these characters, these fictional characters, the story actually never ends. There's
Mm.
always another publication that's coming out. Even when the story ends, they just reboot it
Yeah, the
and,
characters show up in a different story.
and they do it again. They've had like 17
Wow.
Batman movies, and it's just the same. It's just it might be an origin story. It might start from
Yeah.
like how he became Batman again,
Yeah.
even though we
Right.
just saw it 5 times already.
Right.
So there's something about being immersed in these sort of this essence of being in our youth that
Mm-hmm.
was always about um, being present in the moment and never about trying to be
That's it.
finished with the moment. But what happens to us as we age, where we
Okay.
get convinced it's about checklists and
Yeah.
completing and goal setting
Yeah.
and New Year's resolutions and
Yeah.
something that we can scratch off and mark off and be done.
I got it.
I don't know what, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. That you asking that question. Okay. So two things. It gave me a concrete example of something that brought me joy that I was really good at growing up and why I quit that shit. So some people may not, if you have a certain age, you're not even gonna know what I'm about to talk about, but they used to teach penmanship in school.
They did. Yeah.
Um, they used to teach us not so much what to write, but how to write it and how to communicate it and express it in a way that's clear. So it was writing standard, and then it was writing with cursive, and I was really really good. I had very excellent penmanship
You
growing
know
up.
you know what letter used to like really mess me up? Like the
What?
lowercase R when they trying to teach that lowercase when it does the
Yeah.
little boop
And
boop
then
boop
it
boop, and then it hit that one. That R used to jack me up like all the time, bro. The lowercase R.
that was some that was some of my best work, bro. My lowercase r's was top notch. My lowercase r, my lowercase s was top notch. S was special to me because my mother's name is Sandra, so I always wanted to get the J for me and the S for her. I always
Yeah,
wanted to get those right.
yeah.
Always. Um, but yeah, I was good at it to the point in third grade I got an award, penmanship award joint, like best, like no other third grade in my school, third grader could write like me, right? And you talk about joy, I really took joy in it. It was it's crazy. I think this is how we knew this was a podcast episode. It's crazy because I laugh and I think about just how much that translates and affects who I am today and how I view myself as an artist or digital artist, whatever, and just my love for the aesthetic and graphic design, like all that. But penmanship, I enjoyed it. Like I remember figuring out I could write different ways by holding my pen a different way, holding my pencil a different way. And I remember like this part of my finger would get sore, but I remember like giving in to the pain of it in order to make the perfect shaped letters, the letters that flowed, that had style, that had feel. Like before I knew anything about handwriting analysis, my my handwriting conveyed this like artsy kind of creative vibe for me at a very very early age.
What what
But
what 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 do you think that was? I didn't mean to cut you off. My
oh
bad.
no 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 no.
What do you think it was because um penmanship is the one place where there is an absolutely perfect intersection between art and message. Uh, it's
Damn.
it's it's you're taking words that are words that say something, but
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it in an artistic way, and it's almost like the exact perfect intersection of the two. Like, was it something about? I mean, maybe at that age you may not have had an
Right
understanding of
right.
like maybe you just enjoyed it. You know what I mean? But do you think that you could pinpoint what it
Nah,
was?
that's exactly verbatim. That's it, bro. I had to write it down. That's it. And you say art and message. You know
Right.
what I mean? And they both have this overlap, but in your handwriting, and so it translates to art when there is a message, when there are words that need to be written. There's a way to do it. There's a way. Sometimes you type it, sometimes you draw it, sometimes you paint it. There's a way to do it. Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. And if no one else cared, I cared. If no one else thought it was dope, I thought it was dope. And I mean, it followed me. It followed me my whole life. I remember when I first when was this? This was before I started. I was a co-pastor. I was I can't think, associate pastor. And we had a big meeting, and somebody was supposed to bring a laptop. They didn't. And I said, I'll take notes. And I remember taking notes for the meeting. It was a district meeting, and I wrote it by hand. And after it was done, the district superintendent was saying, okay, we'll type up notes or whatever. And when he looked at my paper, and this was plain paper, no, not lined paper, whatever, he was like, nah, we just make copies. Like, what you mean? He was
Yeah.
like, it's readable. Like, no need to recreate this one. I was like, damn.
Right.
It's just little things like that. And people remark about my penmanship. It happened the other day, taking baby girl to get her labs done. Lady said, she was like, you got nice penmanship for a man.
Right.
Thanks.
Right.
Okay. But the reason I quit caring about it, and I didn't find my way back to the intersections of art and message to very recent, like a few years ago, was because of what you just named, the checklist, the having to get completion. Like, and I remember the pain it took to physically write out longer documents. So then, I'm I'm of an area. I'm that in between. I'm that middle child, that J. Cole, that middle child era. So computers are a thing, but computers are really becoming a thing as I'm coming of age, so to speak. So I just remember like, oh well, if it's about the message, if the message is key, if that's how I get the good grades, if that's what matters, then let me just focus on this. And fast forward to now, people don't write stuff by hand anymore, and it's getting to a place where you don't necessarily need a laptop anymore. You writing with your thumbs at this point. Um, but that's what did it. That's what did it. Like the pain that it took to create the art, and also the fact that it was just easier and quicker to express myself typing versus writing.
Mm.
And over time, the functionality, was compromised, kind of went away, and then the love and the passion kind of went away. And if it wasn't for the grace of the ancestors, I may have never found my way back to that side of who I am as a creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, mine in that same story, the essence of that comic book story is
Mhm.
very much the same thing for me. Like at that age, that younger age, I probably couldn't pinpoint what it
Mhm.
was that resonated with me so much. Um, on my father's side of my family, I come from a family of artists, like all different types of artists,
Mhm.
musicians. Like the artistic side really, really flourishes heavy on my dad's
Okay.
side.
Okay.
Really gifted artists, dancers, musicians,
Sculptors.
writers, sculptors, like everything.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so when I was younger, I used to draw a lot. And a lot of it was freehand drawing. A lot of it was um, like, man, what I would pay to just be able to find any of those like drawings.
Yeah.
And in processing it, I realized like, wow, what could have manifested from that if someone had paid attention to
Mhm.
the joy and the space of the expression of what it was that I was doing. It was almost a thing, just as we talked about in other discussions, that we don't know these things that we have, these little knacks, these little gifts and skills, the penmanship thing, the
Mhm.
drawing thing
Mhm.
could actually create a life for us,
Yeah.
could actually be things that could build legacy for us if
Mhm.
we knew how to cultivate that, or if we are surrounded by people, even if the people around us didn't know what to do with that, if they
Mhm.
said, you know what, I need to take my child or my guardian or who I have guardianship over or my mentee or whoever it is
Mhm.
around
Mhm.
some people who know what to do with this,
Yeah.
and offer them to that space to
Yeah.
see if they can nurture that and see if there's something there, if you can identify this sort of natural talent
Yeah.
that the person may have. And then on the other side of that coin, I've realized as I've gotten older, part of my gift is storytelling, um,
Yeah.
and being able to take art and craft art in a way to tell stories.
Mhm.
When so one of the things I used to do, and it just hit me now as we're talking through this,
Mhm.
going back, like your mind goes back to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to read the issue of the comic book, and I would
Uh-huh.
get to the end of that issue, and on the back there's always the little advertisements or whatever thing.
Mhm.
Once I finished reading the issue of the comic book, I would go back to the very beginning, to the front few pages, and look at who did what after I had read and looked through the whole storyline. I would
Okay.
look to see, if um, if Todd McFarlane was doing something, or Chris Claremont was doing something,
Okay. Okay.
or Kirby was doing something, um, and almost if you spend enough time in these stories, these things, just like what you just described, becomes like fingerprints. So
Yeah.
I had gotten so accustomed to the way certain people told stories and the way certain artists drew certain characters. I could look at a Wolverine and tell you what artist was drawing in that issue, because they drew
Gotcha.
the characters and their attributes and certain things very differently from
Gotcha.
each other. But almost like a soda drinker trying to explain the difference between Coke and Pepsi to somebody who doesn't drink soda, it wouldn't make sense. It all tastes like soda.
Mhm.
And but that thing becomes a fingerprint,
Yeah.
and so, and as I've gotten older, I'm like wow, I actually do the same things that was drawing me to the comic book. I do it now in my adulthood, and I probably always have done it
Yeah.
at some point over the last 30 years.
Yeah. Did you ever have you ever been called verbose? verbose or talkative or long-winded in a negative way.
all the time.
Yeah,
All the time. You use too many words. You okay, we get it.
yeah,
Okay, like, oh, okay, here goes Q on one of these rants and
yeah,
soapboxes and and it's so funny to me when I hear that because it's always to me like a gross mischaracterization of me.
mm-hmm,
That if most people who have said that about me really understood what was happening psychologically for me,
mm-hmm,
I'm chasing the word.
mm,
It's it's
mm,
it's not that I'm intending to be long-winded. I'm actually chasing the perfect word to articulate the perfect feeling of exactly how I'm feeling in that
yeah,
moment. So I
yeah,
may use a whole bunch of extra words to help compensate
yeah,
for the singular word that I'm looking for.
mm-hmm,
And when I get it, and I get a hold of it, I'm like, that's it. That's the description.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So absolutely. Like
yeah,
all the time. That's been my whole life. That's been one of those just things that get tagged on to me. And I hear I've grown to accept it, but
mm-hmm,
I've always kind of chuckled to myself and I'm like, internally, I'm actually not long-winded. If I could find the words faster,
yeah,
I would use maybe 80% less words.
yeah. But it's for the sake of the art. And I think that's what I was getting at. Like, people will assess and make their assessment and their judgments of the art that you're creating, even if you don't realize you're being an artist in that moment. And those are the type of things that try to kill imagination. Um,
Yep.
Imagination and creativity can live inside of boxes, sure, because it's creative energy that damn designed the box. Like, we give the box such a bad think outside the box. What did the box ever do to you?
Right.
It's really about who made the box and who owns the box. But that's a different,
Yeah.
that's a different
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But those are the type of things, those judgments, like knee-jerk reactions and judgment to the ways in which we show up as artists and creatives. That's the type of poison that unfortunately we spoon feed children more so than anybody, that tries to kill imagination. And I say we spoon feed it to children because by our adulthood, we take it every day, in the morning. Like, it becomes medicine that we take because we're just so used to it. Like, we took it in
Wait,
school.
what's the it we take?
The
What?
it is out of bound knee-jerk judgments of our art and
Oh, I
creativity.
got you.
Just like, just drop in judgments. Like, yeah, if you listen to 30 seconds of what I'm saying, you might catch the gist in 5 seconds and you're wondering why it took 25 more. It's because I'm an artist. And
Yep.
I'm painting pictures right now with these words. Like, I'm creating a film. As you said, like, one of your gifts is storytelling, and it really is. And so to that effect, you need those words
Yep.
because all stories aren't told the same, and you can't tell the storyteller how to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
What tradition, what ancient tradition does anybody get a chance to raise their hand and say, Mrs. Storyteller, Mr. Storyteller, could you make that first part a little shorter? That's not how it works. You let a painter paint, you let a storyteller tell the story.
And to that point, I've been you name imagination, and I think the biggest culprit to imagination is Father Time. I see this figure of Father Time, and Father Time has created a poison,
Mhm,
like a kryptonite to imagination.
mhm,
And Father Time, Father Time's goal
mhm,
is to eradicate the imagination as quickly as possible. And the poison that it gives to the imagination is checklist,
mhm,
is the fact that, like, what you just described, in yes, this thing requires this many words to actually say, it's
mhm.
a condition of patience. And
Yeah.
something that's hovered over the sort of course, the arc of like society, like we've lost the essence of patience to sit with things. We want everything bite sized. We want everything in 140 characters.
140.
We want everything in bullet points. We want everything in an infographic. And some things, actually the greatest things could never be captured in that essence. Could never be captured in a way that we can bookmark it and I got to go do some other stuff and I'll come back to it later. The real true things are the things that actually make us sit with it. A prime example of this, a prime example of this, and this happened on the trip, is grief. Grief talks a lot. Grief uses a lot of words. Grief is very communicative. And the thing that we really probably hate about grief is that we have no choice but to be patient with it. We unpatient ourselves away from grief because it says, I don't care what you decide to do. You can bookmark me, you can whatever. I'm not going anywhere until I decide to go somewhere. And it's the one thing that we can't do anything about in terms of like, we just got to sit with it. And that, like that trip, you know, happening on that trip and having the passing happen and then the service and then even the sort of residual lingering effects. And then even compounding that with all of the other passings I've had over my life. And grief is like, yeah, I'm still here. Oh, you thought I left because I just been quiet, sitting in the back, but instead of talking this time, I just started writing you a letter and I just handed to you like maybe, you know, every 45 days or so.
Yeah.
Just to remind you that I haven't gone anywhere.
Grief is going through the same thing you've gone through your whole life. Grief just trying to tell grief story. Like, this story is important. And grief probably is upset and furious. Like, you all act like I'm trying to hurt your feelings on purpose. No, I'm just telling my story because my story is not just about pain and tears. It's about joy and triumph and good times and memories and essence and creative energy and how love transcends any construct we can imagine. And so grief is like, sit your ass down, listen to this story, and don't just take the 140 character snapshot of it that happens in the funeral moment when everybody's crying. Like, that is such a poor trailer for the story. You know, grief is trying to tell. Like, grief, like, I'm trying to take you from the beginning to the never end.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And yeah, and I think man, I don't even want to rush past that because that's like really powerful about thinking of the story that grief has to tell and has been telling us our entire lives. All like you know, this conversation with our younger selves. Grief showed up on the day of our birth when we left the comfort of the womb and we were pushed into this new world. The tears, in my opinion, I think are for sadness, are for the longing of the comfort of the womb where everything is perfect, where my entire environment around me is optimized for my success. The entire environment is all about my thriving. Everything about it is designed for me to thrive. And the universe, God, or the divine, or however, you know, whatever your classification may be, pushes us out, you know, the canal or through C-section or however it is that we enter into the world. And we enter into, and then the baby starts crying. And the moment that those tears happen, that the doctors classify as life, which is crazy because it's what the doctors want. They want the sound, they want the noise, because that's a clear definition of life, that the child is living and breathing and is here, is the exact moment that we experience our first moment of grief. And from that moment on, we have this weird relationship with it,
Yeah.
where we're
Yeah.
never actually comfortable with it, but it's been there with us longer than anything else that we've had in life.
Yeah. Yeah, bruh. And part of the reason I think we get into this a lot in our conversations, part of the reasons, we have to take time to unpack these ideas is because who's to say grief ever opted into that movie title, that book title?
Wow.
Grief, as we know it, may have shown up as remembrance of spiritual life before that moment.
Mm.
May have showed, because while you were talking, I had to write it down again. It's so good. Just thinking, what if the story grief? Because I'm gonna put quotes. Because who's to say that energy ever opted into being named that?
Mm.
But grief showed up trying to tell you the story of how others before you failed to realize that the world that you were born into is still surrounding you and meant for your good. Like leaving
Oh
the
man.
womb did not mean there's no more world around you that's created for you to thrive and grow and develop all the, I mean, the little update joints, like your baby is now the size of a coconut. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing in this world that wasn't designed for your creativity and your love and your power to grow in the same way. And I'm just trying to tell you about how lifetimes before yours, maybe even your lifetimes before this one, people just didn't see it. And I'm trying to tell you, like, there are all these sad moments that can deter you and become poisonous for you, but there are also these liberative moments, like these moments of freedom that can help you discover, the answers for you, for your betterment, for your enrichment.
Mm.
Man.
Wow, that's a radical reframing of grief in such the most like beautiful, amazing way. Uh, this this new place, this new place that you've entered. It's crazy because I closed my eyes and I went,
Mm,
just did it. This
mm,
new place that you've entered can be as loving, as kind, as thriving, as supportive, as helpful, as committed to your ability to grow into your full self as the womb was.
mm-hmm,
And I am here, I have been assigned to you. This is grief talking. I have
mm,
been assigned to you
mm,
as your sojourner
mm,
to walk with you for the duration of this life as a constant reminder that it can be that if you allow it to be, if you create it to be, if you go after it,
mm-hmm,
and if you trust that it can.
mm-hmm.
That is a that I yeah, that's a man, that is a very, very, very different definition of grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, man, because when I think about, your reason for going back home and just, like I said, it looked good on you and all of the good that it brought from, the thing is, like, why do we have to buy into this idea that grief is a bad thing and grief got us there, but joy won and grief doesn't have the final say? So, like, maybe just a simple reframing of it, of
Mhm.
what it's trying to accomplish in the moment. And it really makes sense when you think about those of us that struggle with grief. We look at it as a bad thing, and it's maybe it wasn't completely intended to be. And so that's why it causes you to be anxious. That's why you get depressed. That's why you can't eat, you can't sleep, because you're not embracing the fullness of it. Like you're only getting a snapshot of the art, of the power, just the love energy that's flowing through it. Like there is no grief without the story that it took to get there. Grief in our traditional understanding, the
Right.
sad, you can't be sad for a life that was lived if the life was never lived. So that means we're just focusing on a moment of pain that it took so much joy, it took so much love and light to get to that space. And surprise, surprise, it does not end.
Mm-hmm.
My granddaddy and my grandma in this room right now. You know what I mean? Like it does not end. They are running through my veins right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
So, so to build on that, so okay, so I went home,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I referenced this at the beginning, but I went home physically, but based on what you're saying, I also went home metaphysically and metaphorically.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, well, where is home really?
Right.
You
Right.
know what I mean? Like where does it reside?
Yeah.
Where, you know, and how many trips do we make home?
Yeah.
Or how many more times should we go home than we are? You know?
Right. Yeah, because the spiritual Google map, the spiritual road map isn't spatial like physical maps. So you don't have to actually physically travel to these spaces to get in the metaphysical spiritual mind state to do some digging and updating to the roadmap, to the guide map and their guideposts all along the way. Um, hmm,
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm,
So um you know, we've been kind of bouncing back and forth between a conversation with our younger self and a conversation with our younger selves. And I don't know if we've come to a conclusion on where do we sit, because earlier in the conversation, you know, you named immediate, they were back to back. You named like 4 to 5
mm,
different significant ages
yep,
where if you were having a conversation, the conversation might show up differently
yep,
to each one of those ages.
yep. I think I did like 12, 11, 9, and 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And which one, you know, so like how is it that oh man, I got so many thoughts. So based on what you said earlier, based on what you said earlier, you were like, you know, I don't know where to find these people. They're all over. They're scattered about in our consciousness, deep in our soul, in our thinking, in our feeling, our being. They are out there, and they are running everywhere, not because they're trying to get away from anything, but because the running everywhere is the joy. It's
Yeah.
it's the joy of seeing the kid run about in a field playfully
Mhm.
with no destination, but just taking in
Hmm.
and soaking in the moment of running around. And that's
Mhm.
the experience of, like, again, trapped in this checklist thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're doing it in the process of talking about where are they and how do we find them, because we're trying to check them off the list. Okay, I got the 12-year-old. Okay, I finally got the 12-year-old. Now that 6-year-old, I don't know where he is. I got to go look
I
hard and fast. The 16-year-old didn't go too far. 16-year-old was just sitting over there on the stoop. So I knew I
yeah,
could call him over, beckon him to me.
yeah.
But is that part of the problem too? Like the checklist of having to try to find the different ages is inherently
Yeah.
back to the same cycle.
Back to the yeah, I'm glad you brought up the checklist again, because it was when you were talking about father time trying to poison imagination. And I thought about it, I don't know if it was intentional, but it feels intentional that you said father time and not time. And it
Yeah.
made me wonder if Father Time is really listening to this conversation, and if this conversation is liberative for Father Time as well, because Father Time only became quote unquote Father Time because they, whoever they is, told him to become that. That really Time says, look, my younger self is named Time.
Yeah.
They call me Father Time, but my younger self and selves, from lifetimes and eons ago, is named Time. But I just started wearing this hat, and they, whoever they is, right, gave me the poison first. And I'm really not trying to hurt anyone,
Mm.
but structure to your day and structure to your creativity is really how you see the fulfillment of time.
Mm.
So if that's the case, I don't want you wasting time. So I'm trying to hurry you along and check off these boxes, because you got to finish school at a certain age. You got to start your career at a
Yep.
certain age. You
Yep.
got to get married at a certain age. You got to have kids by a certain age. You got to switch careers or not switch careers at a certain age. And I'm just trying to get you to the end of it that they have agreed upon as the end. So here, take this,
Yep.
take this, and don't let imagination, because imagination and I were really good friends when we were younger,
Mm-hmm.
but imagination never made anything of herself,
Mm.
or so it seems. It just, so thank you for bringing that, because that was kind of the quick little tangent I went on. Like, man, we're all back in this box, in this trap, maybe just because that's where most of us exist and live. And without conversations with our younger selves, we wouldn't even know that it doesn't have to be like that. You do not have to orchestrate your time and your creativity and your energy. You don't have to orchestrate it like that for the sake of a checklist. It could be for the sake of just the sheer art of it, the beauty of it, the admiration.
Yeah, and I think what it is, if I had to name the uh the secret sauce,
Mm-hmm.
is that the younger self, imagination, the sort of whimsical nature of youthfulness,
Mm-hmm.
are not bound by safety. And
Hmm.
there's something that has happened
Yeah,
with this
that's
father
it.
time construct that we're talking about,
That's it. Yep.
now has to pay so much attention to safety and security because we are programmed to do so. Every single thing become the whole checklist becomes about safety and security.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you can take care of yourself when you get older, and make
Yep.
sure that you can, are you sure that if you did that, that in 5 years you won't regret it?
Yeah.
Are everything becomes about this mysterious thing. And maybe this idea of breaking out of the box, when you ask the question, like, what's wrong with the box? Like, who said that there was a problem with the box? Maybe because the box is just a construct of the womb.
Mm.
And we need
Mm.
to create boxes because we're trying to recreate the womb, this place of safety
Mm.
and security.
It's small.
It's small,
Yeah.
it contains us, but we know we don't have anything to worry about because
Yep.
everything is working to our good. And so
Yeah.
we work to create
Yeah.
boxes in order to work to our best ability to thrive. And
Uh-huh.
anything outside of that jeopardizes our ability to thrive. But we may discover, just as us leaving the womb and coming into the world, everything outside of the womb and everything outside of the box can manifest just as much wholeness, embodiment, thriving as the thing inside of the box could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the entity that actually is designed the womb and the box is outside of the box.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
mother figure
Yeah.
is
It
literally outside of the womb of the thing that the child is living inside of.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
universe is outside of the box. And that's where imagination, that's where all of these wonderful things
Yeah.
live out there.
And it's inside at the same time.
Yes.
And that's why it always has a point of reference to nurture, because it's like women that carry. And I know this can be a tough topic for a lot of people, but this whole conversation is about liberation. So just women that carry physically, put it like that, carry, you know if everything goes how it goes, then a woman already has eggs, like life is already in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um and just my wife talks all the time about mom shaming and mommy shaming, and let me just say for a minute, that shit is so whack, man.
Yep.
That shit is so whack. Like, but I get it because the world is so harsh and so
The
bad on
world is
women.
whack. Yep.
Yeah, like, and so especially on black women, like, it makes you hard. Like, hard times make hard people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really whack because, let me just be a voice to say, however the ancestors choose you or enable you to create life, it's
Yeah.
beautiful, it's worthwhile, and there's no shame involved with anything, because I know some moms that never physically birthed some babies, but if it were not for their sheer existence, it's some babies, it's some children, it's some grown men, some grown women that would not be living and breathing on this earth. So let's not get into that trap of prioritizing and ranking how life is
Yeah.
created and all that.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? But point I'm trying to make is, like, the human body can carry life in stages, like, because the birth organs are already there, even in the womb.
Yep.
They form in the womb, so that life is outside of these boxes, these wombs, and also inside of these boxes. And the biggest deception, or one of the big deceptions to this human existence in this particular lifetime, is trying to create disconnect and act as if they're not always connected, to act as if we're not always updating our spiritual roadmaps.
Yeah.
Like, this is happening ongoing. That's the beauty of it. That's where the energy, the power of love
Right.
comes from. The fact that this creative process is happening over and over again, and it shows
All
up.
the time.
You know, man, I really want to go sit my younger self down, like the 6-year-old one in particular, because that's the one I can't find.
Mm.
This whole ever since I said it, and ever since you highlighted, I'm like, where is he? I so my 12-year-old self, he was gone for a long time. He showed back up at the age of 29.
Mm.
He took 17 years, and he came back and he said, time's up. He was like, all right, now I've been waiting a long time, because I got saved when I was 12. I don't know if I ever told you this story. I got saved on the side of my bed looking out the window when I was 12 years old with nobody around. And I had a little conversation with myself, and I was like, all right, they say I need Jesus to go to heaven, and they say I was born in sin, and I need to believe that he died and he lives again. I gotta believe it inside. I gotta say it outside. And so when I do that, bet I ain't going to hell, and I'm just gonna live this life and just, you know, I'm gonna just do it the way they told me you do it, because that's what everybody else do. And I made that agreement with myself at 12. I didn't have the theological framework or language to articulate what I was doing in that moment, but that was my first, theological soul discovery, if you will. And it showed back up at 29, like, all right, bro, this ain't really what we want. So you said when we were sitting on the side of the bed, we were just gonna try it on. We were just gonna try it out. Okay, let's do something different. And that's how that went. And ever since, me and 12-year-old self have just kind of been rocking like, all right, well, what's next? What how do we transition to something more life-giving?
Yeah, and as I was sitting here listening to you, I was thinking, I was like, okay, what do we do with everything that we just dumped on this conversation? And immediately I started to think about like deprogramming ourselves from what they told us we weren't good at, you know,
Mm.
whatever that means for different
Mm-hmm.
people. Um, and and I want to be very clear in saying, um, deprogramming what we were told that we are not good at is not the same thing as having self awareness of recognizing things that aren't your strong suits. That's not the same thing.
Perfect. Perfect.
Um, we all have things that we're just not strong in. They're just not skill sets that are things that are innate to us, and to our being and who we are. And that's perfectly fine. That's the way it should
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm.
Because there needs to be room for other people who do have that as their skill set. But I'm talking about what the world has convinced us when that 6-year-old version that you can't find,
Mm-hmm.
so absolutely certain this is the thing that that helps to give me life. It's not the only thing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but man, it's such an important thing. And if I just knew that I could hold on to this thing
Mm-hmm.
um, forever,
Mm-hmm.
man, things would just be different. And it's that the deprogramming, these all of these things around us that convince us you're not good at that, not because you're literally not good at it. It's because I or we or somebody or something thinks you should be doing something else.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That was what I bought into at 12. But when I, like you said, when I think about the 6-year-old, little fella, I don't know if he cared about it like that. And maybe that's the beauty of it. And so when you talk about, these things that you're good at, so from 12 onward, I developed new sets of things that I was good at,
Yep.
but still being admonished to not pay attention to the things that I either was not good at or were not good for me. And I bought
Right.
into it at 12, and that was the whole undoing at 29. But I think about your story and the comic books and everything. Um, how did how did that get stripped away? Not so much where did it go, but is that connected to something that people told you was not good for you, or maybe it had something to do with somebody told you weren't good at, or something you felt you weren't good at? Like I already got mine loaded up. I know exactly what it was they told me I wasn't good at, or either I felt I wasn't good at, and which makes it much more difficult to find that younger self to talk through it
Yeah.
with him.
I would, yeah, probably a combination of all of that. A combination
Okay.
of not seeing any examples around me of
Mm.
one, or of course, again, as we always say, like a lot of this stuff is pre-internet, there's no access to representation. And
Yeah.
we underestimate how important representation is to our development in terms of like of this thing, this essence, this thing that like
Mhm.
that's calling us to it. We need to be able to somehow see it show up in the world and see it looking like us too, not just seeing
Yeah.
somebody doing a thing or whatever, but we need to see a version of ourselves doing that thing. Um, and
Yeah.
also, you know, the the potential ridicule of it. So
Mhm.
like I didn't have anyone around me that was in the comic book world and in that fantasy world and in that, like, that was for the nerds and the geeks at that time. Like, who knew that it'd be a multi-billion-dollar enterprise later? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? No, somebody knew clearly, but
Clearly, right, right.
at the time, it was like such a niche thing.
Hmm.
It would be the equivalent of like a stamp collector.
Hmm.
It's like you didn't really talk about it that much, and it
Yeah.
was just something that I kind of absorbed on my own in my own just world and experience. And so I didn't know it wasn't stripped from me.
Uh-huh.
I never had it because I never knew that I could hold on to it and grab it and just
Uh,
carry it with me everywhere that I went, you know. Um all of these things, same thing for like playing the saxophone, like was good at playing the saxophone and I gave it up because it just wasn't cool. Because nobody
mm,
around me played instruments, because it was the nerdy thing, because it was, if I know what I know now, you know what I mean? Like, but at the time it was like, I
yeah.
want to go be with them.
Yeah.
And so in order for me to be with them, I can't be with this. But I
Yeah.
could if I just knew that I could. If I knew that I could be all of it, I could be with
Yeah.
them and still be with this over here.
Uh-huh.
Oh, life changing, And I mean, I guess maybe that is part of the modern day application of like knowing knowing that that yes is possible, knowing
Mm,
that like that you can be, oh, this is, yeah, here it is. You can be yes to all of the yous that you feel.
mm,
Like, you can be all of the yous. It's okay. It's acceptable. Be all of them, every single one of them.
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
don't have to leave any of them behind to be accepted in another place.
Yeah.
And we don't learn that until we're much older, that those elements about ourselves, the one thing that we probably wanted to leave behind, is the
Hmm.
thing that becomes the unique X factor that people love us for.
Yeah.
That people are like, wow, that's so beautiful. Oh man. And then you, like, now, like, you see somebody, the cool dude playing a saxophone, and he's so great, so cool. Look at, what I'm saying? Like, now it's
Yep.
like that's the thing. And at the time, it was the corny band player,
Yeah.
not realizing that, elevating up, like playing ahead of my group, moving, I was second chair, moving into first chair.
Hmm.
And like, but conceptually, I don't really understand what that means at the time. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know that there was something significant to that.
It's
Um,
and see, that's why this is deeper than advice, man. Because you got to go back and find that young saxophone player. Like, where is he?
yeah.
Like, where we keep coming back to that question, where do you go to find it?
Yeah.
And it's more than just, hey, do this. It's, look, it's okay, as you just said, it's okay to be you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of what we have to push back against, bro, and my bad if I cut you off.
No, 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 no. You good?
Uh, we gotta push back. So as I'm thinking about be all the yous,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about the me's that might have gotten the rest of me hurt. And
Mm.
so I thought about self-control, but how could, what if, and I heard somebody say it where they were alluding to it. They didn't go as deep as they didn't dive as deep as we do. But what if we shouldn't be trying to teach self-control, but teach passion. And what I mean by that is, if you're passionate about a thing, you're naturally gonna do whatever it takes to be able to continue to do it.
Yeah.
So if a child is passionate about being athletic, instead of teaching that child, you got to wake up at a certain time and work out a certain time and work out like this, it's, look, if you want to be able to do this on a high level, these are the things you need to do.
that you
So
have to do. Right.
do them as you feel led, and that way you commit, and it's not like taking some type of poisonous medicine. It becomes like a spiritual discipline. It comes contemplative practice. It becomes this life-giving energy because of passion and love and all of these fruitful things versus mandates and checklists and
Yeah.
benchmarks,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and incentives, because they're the reason we opt in to the box, the reason, going back to 12-year-old me, the reason I did it was incentives. I thought it was some good, and it was some good.
Yeah.
It just ran its course. And
Yeah.
and that's why I've grown to a place like, I guess there's a piece about regret in there.
Yeah.
Not so much a regret, it's just honoring the time that was. That
Mhm.
that happened. That's a story to tell. It informs me now. It really provided my whole platform now. Now I have an ear and a heart for people that are struggling with finding themselves spiritually
Mhm.
because of everything I've gone through. And like even you, your storytelling piece, they kept trying to tell you to shut up. But that spirit inside you that pushed you to keep telling the story, now it's developed into, I mean, you want to, top 5 storytellers in my book. For real. For real.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Man, I guess you know, I mean, maybe, this is maybe a great place to put a pin in it right here. Is this is we've unpacked so much, man. But just in closing,
Mm-hmm.
um, just figuring out how to do what really feels good, and figuring out how to package that feel good thing from 12, from 6, from whatever, into something that can be meaningful for you and the people around you, so that it's not just a self-serving sort of response,
Exactly.
not just
Exactly.
something for your own like shits and giggles, but
Exactly.
something that actually can create meaningful existence for you and the people around you, the people that you are connected to. In some ways, back to this womb concept,
Mm-hmm.
we've never not been connected to somebody. We
Mm.
entered our creation having both a physical connection, the umbilical cord,
Yeah, yeah.
and a connection because we grow inside of someone else. We grow inside
Inside.
of someone else. That is a wild concept.
That's someone else that's half you.
Right. Right.
Like you literally grew inside half of yourself.
Right. Right. So
Well, we gotta go. we gotta.
yeah.
No, keep going, but like, bruh,
Nah.
we gotta go.
Oh man.
We gotta let
What?
these
Yeah.
people go. We gotta let them go.
Let's put a pin in it. Let's put a pin in it, man. Yeah, right there. Let's put a pin in it, man. No,
Yeah.
that's it right there. That's it, man. Look, man. Check us out, man. Look, follow us on social media. You can find us everywhere. We Come as Equals.
Yeah.
Instagram, Twitter. Definitely check us out on YouTube. If you follow us on YouTube, or if you like the content that we're producing, hit subscribe, share it with other people. We also post clips on YouTube. So if you don't have time to watch the full hour-and-a-half episode or whatever the case may be, you could just share the clips. And we always want to remind you all, like, we're not doing this for self-promotion or self-aggrandizement. We want to really create and develop these messages and ideas just to help spread our gifts out to the world, but to also help initiate conversation that we think you all may be interested in. This is some really heavy stuff sometimes, but it's also some really like good stuff that you could carry with you. So if you really want to bookmark something, this is something that you want to bookmark.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
check us out. We'll be back with you soon.
Next
Jay, any
time.
closing thoughts?
Nah, man, I'm gonna let it speak for itself.
All right, word. Cool. We see y'all soon. Peace.
Yep.
Bet.
Bruh.
That's it.
Bruh, we was headed into some fifth dimension shit.
We about to-
Dog, that whole joint.
the whole joint.
This is it though.
This the one.
More skeleton,
Yeah.
skeleton outline, and just trust ourselves.
Yep.
There was a lot of on the spot conversation, decision making. The thing that was, we kept remembering former points.
Yep.
We kept remembering them joints, and none of it was forced.
Right. Because we weren't so beholden to the paper
Yeah.
outline. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah.
We were forced to have to really be present in the conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, that, man, this one right here, it's so crazy because as we were talking, I was bookmarking clips. Like, I don't know if you was doing that too. For the YouTube and the IG, I was like, oh, we got some bangers on here.
We got some joints. So, like this episode in particular, I probably gotta go back to the drawing board for real. Like, it's some digital art that needs to come from some of these ideas. Like the joint you want me to do in the